Welcome to my webinar on confronting our mortality and immortality. I've been looking over the webinars that I've done over the last several years, and I really feel that this webinar is kind of the culmination, the top of the mountain, as it were, of all the subject material that I've covered. It's a very special topic for me. I think many of you know I just turned 80 years old, and I faced starting my ninth decade with a degree of trepidation, and then a renewed commitment to having a successful next decade or two or three. Don't want to be too greedy about this, but going through that process really had me thinking about a topic that we all need to talk about, and that often that conversation, both with ourselves and with our families and friends, is often put off. And so I thought I'd kind of go through some of this material and share that with you, in the hope that all of you, as you see the days and years passing, contemplate, what you want in the closing part of your life and thereafter. Because at some point in our life, we all realize that we won't live in this body forever. Sooner or later, something happens. Usually it's a thing, though sometimes it just sort of creeps up on us. But sooner or later, something typically happens that forces us to confront our mortality. The fact that we're not going to continue to live in this body forever. We all know that as a fact, but when we're young, we don't really come to grips with it unless something happens that actually really challenges that. And it's a thing that we see people dealing with all the time. I've been watching season 5 of the television series Virgin River, which is streaming on Netflix. And one of the youngsters, I think he's 19 now in the story, has been diagnosed biochemically as having Huntington's disease. He carries the gene for Huntington's disease, which is a degenerative neurologic disorder. And it's, in a sense, it's a death sentence. It usually doesn't start until 30, 40, even later in life, and can take a couple of decades or more to progress to death. And there are many other diseases, of course, that we face that, lead to death over a long period of time. Parkinson's disease is one of them, where, it's, it basically says to you what you've always known, which is the young aren't going to go on forever. And in the story, the fellow with Huntington's disease has found that the way he copes with the diagnosis, and it's only a diagnosis, he doesn't have any symptoms in the story, but it's interesting because he's just there. But the way he deals with it is to really treasure every day and make every day count, to make it valuable for himself, and to live in the present. And living in the present means not really thinking a lot about the future or the past. You can plan to, you can plan for some years down the road, of course, but it really means being present in everything, being aware today, right now, and dealing with what's going on in your life right now. And then the third thing is to trust that others can deal with your situation, with your dying. And that's a really big one, and I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on that tonight. Let me go over some of the things that trigger in our awareness that we're not going to live forever, and having to deal with our mortality, having to confront the fact that we are mortal. Death of a relative or a friend, someone we know, can do it, certainly. Sometimes it's just a famous person that passes, and maybe a person, kind of your age. And it just sort of sets off thinking, well, if they could go, I could go. And then you start thinking, well, is it going to be a long, slow exit from this planet, or is it going to happen suddenly? And, I was thinking about some of the things that have been going on in the world this week, the big earthquake in Morocco, and then the terrible flooding in Libya. Death toll in Morocco is over 1,500. I'm not sure where it is right now. The death toll in Morocco may reach 10,000. 10,000 people just gone like that. Life can be snatched away from us in an instant or much more gradually. For instance, if we have an illness or an accident, our passing out may be very slow. We might have something like cancer, for instance, and survive literally for years, dealing with the disease and dealing with life, and figuring out what to do with ourselves and with all our loved ones and family and everything. It can be quite a scene inside. What's going on inside, the scene inside of us, can be quite turbulent. And the other thing, and the thing that was most on my mind as I approached my 80th birthday, was just recognizing and acknowledging the signs of aging. And those can be many things, the change in the appearance of the face and the body, just moving more slowly, not having as much energy, not having that youthful vitality anymore. And it's not that I'm so old in functioning, or even in appearance, people tell me, but it's changed. And it's, essentially irreversible. I am gradually getting older, and as I look around me, so is everybody else, and it can be quite surprising. I saw an old friend. That's an old friend, and I was struck by how old they looked. And of course, I didn't say, "Gee, what's happened to you?" But I was concerned. When I looked at them, it's like, what's been going on? You look old and tired, and kind of beginning to look feeble. So, those kinds of things, those kinds of experiences in our life can trigger a contemplation and a confronting of the fact that we are mortal, and we begin to start to think about what is it that I want in the next period of life. And that period could be very short, or it could be quite long. I'm thinking in terms of, well, what I want the next decade to look like, because that feels like a good period of time. And as I approach the end of that decade, I may start thinking about, the next decade, and what I want in that decade. In the years past, decades past, I thought about, well, what do I want to be doing? I want to be a pediatrician, and I want to be a parent and a father, and husband, and that sort of thing. And I kind of just took that as it came. I had to work towards all of those goals. I had to do things, but it was what can I say? It wasn't like I was working hard at achieving a goal. I was just thinking about, I want to be a pediatrician, so I got to go to medical school, so I got to get through that. I got to get through residency, that kind of thing. So, it was finding my way, in some ways stumbling along, rather than consciously planning. Now I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to do that. I know people that do that sort of thing, who have it all laid out. This is what I want. This is how I'm going to get there. And I really didn't feel that way myself. But now that I've reached 80 years of age, and I'm kind of thinking, what is it I want to do? And I don't have a lot of things on my bucket list. I couldn't think of the term. And I know people have bucket lists. This is what I want to do before in the reasonable period of time that I have to do it. And these are things I want to accomplish. And I think, don't have so many things on my bucket list, really. It's not like I have such specific goals. I want to watch my grandchildren grow up. That's a great joy for me, and I continue to babysit my youngest daughter's child, and that's my youngest granddaughter. And it's, she lives here in Fairfield, and so I get to see her, pretty much 5 afternoons a week. Um, and that's just a great joy for me. And I try to have some connection with the other grandkids as well. And I have a niece that I have a little connection with. My granddaughter has a greater connection with her. It's really sweet. And watching that is very, nourishing to my heart, and, makes me feel very satisfied. And of course, I want to continue to do my healing work, which I find incredibly gratifying and very evolutionary, for myself. So it's very, very valuable. And, my connection with my family, so those things, which are more ongoing, they're not such specific goals, but it's just like, this is how I want to live my life. So my goal is to live my life the way I want to live my life. And so we all go through those processes where we have to figure out, what do we want? And it's not just us. One of the things we have to come to terms with is that we are not an isolated being. We have our own individual needs and goals, but other people have needs about us, concerning us. And so we have to, check in with our family. What do you expect? As I was turning 80, my daughters gave me a grand vacation getaway. We went to Portland, Maine area. It's beautiful up there, just all trees and lakes, and it was just gorgeous. And we were able to do a lot of things. And we had the talk. There are many the talks in many different kinds of them. One is that we have with our almost teenage kids or teenage kids about, sex and reproduction and marriage and life and all that kind of stuff. And that's hopefully not a thing we do all in one session, but there's often a point where we have that talk. One of my daughters was telling me that their now 8-year-old daughter started asking questions the other day, and they had gathered quite a bit of information, and they needed clarification and elaboration. And as my daughter put it, I really wasn't ready for that at 8 years of age. Her being 8 years of age, but the granddaughter. But she got through it just fine, answering questions. And you might say she didn't know what to say until she was asked. She had plenty of information to share, but she didn't know what my daughter needed. But my granddaughter, pardon me, her daughter, was very good about asking very explicit questions. And my daughter rose to the occasion and gave her the answers. And so that's one kind of talk that we have in our life. And then, some people, members of minority groups, have to have another kind of talk, particularly as kids, and particularly their sons, enter teenage years, about the way society works and how to interact with authority figures, such as police. And, that's a very difficult talk to have. Again, hopefully not one that comes without a foundation having been laid over the years. But, coming to grips with the reality that, dealing with authority figures can be very challenging, and you have to be very careful because they do not like to be challenged. But anyway, the talk I'm talking about is expressing to my children what I wanted at the end of my life. And then polling them, so to speak, giving each of them an opportunity to express what they wanted, what they needed. And, in a sense, they all knew it was coming. And I'm pretty sure they were waiting for me to bring it up, initiate the conversation. And it went really well. I mean, they're perfectly rational people and they understand these things. And so, it gave them a chance to say what they wanted and what they might need. Um, and to clarify for them what I wanted and needed, which was really important from my side. It felt really good for me to be able to express that. And so we all came to, I think, a mutual agreement and understanding of how things might go. And, I made it clear to them that there was nothing that I was aware of that was, in any sense immediately going to take me out. I plan to be around for a good long time, at least another decade, maybe more. So it was a good conversation. It's very important when we go to have any kind of conversation around mortality, and we will get to immortality. Well, we start talking about mortality. It's very important that we trust that others can process that information, that awareness. They may not do it very well at first, and we have to forgive them for that if that happens. And sometimes they will be dismissive and try to put it off. And we just come back to it later on. But we need to trust that they can deal with it and that they will deal with it and that they will deal with it as they need to, which may not be how we need to, but hopefully they will accept what we need and be able to process that. And as the conversation goes on, and it doesn't have to be just one session, it can be an ongoing kind of thing, that they go through that process and figure it out and confront the fact that, yeah, you're mortal and, you're not going to be around forever. And, that while you're around, you're going to try to make the most of it and, spend time with them and, be there for them. And that they're there for you too. And, let that evolve. One of the most difficult things, and I watched it in my own family, one of the most difficult things is when a child dies before a parent. And that is not an uncommon thing to happen. It's very common. Sometimes it's in childhood, sometimes it's in young adulthood, and sometimes it's even, when one person's middle-aged and the other one is much older. It is extremely hard on a parent to watch a child die or to have a child die if it happens suddenly like that. I think either way, it's just horrible. And parents may need a lot of support. If your parents are still living, there's two conversations, right? There's the one conversation about what they want and expect, and what you want and expect about them. And then there's, about your life and your mortality and what they might have to deal with. Because we never know. We never know. Yes, there's astrology, and sometimes it can be helpful in knowing these things are coming. But most of us, people just disappear from this planet. Sometimes, suddenly is what I'm saying. They just suddenly aren't there anymore. They can, a heart attack or stroke or some other, physical kind of thing like that, or they're in an accident, or some, God forbid, some other sort of situation occurs. I get emails just about every day from parents who have lost children in school shootings, for instance. God bless, there are not an awful lot of those people, but many of them are trying, to change the climate of the country so that this kind of thing doesn't keep happening. When I was a kid, I would say that was an unknown thing. And then, now it's not real common, but it does happen. And it's, a terribly tragic thing when it does. So, you just don't know. And a lot of those people, are grieving very deeply and continuing to grieve now, for some of them for many years. The parents of people who died at Columbine High School in Colorado, that was more than a decade ago, and they continue to grieve that loss. Very hard on parents. So it's good if we talk about, and what are we going to do if, and what I would like to see happen if. It's good to have those conversations and to process it ourselves and give our people we're close to the opportunity to process it also. So let's turn now to considerations about, well, what happens after we die? Where does that come from? Our understanding about that, and how can we, what are we going to anticipate? Is there any planning necessary? What are my goals? If goals are something to be had, what will come after our death? How we view death and a possible afterlife comes from many factors. Religious teachings, to be sure. Almost all religions have some recognition of existence that goes on beyond the physical body and consequences from life, what the afterlife is going to be like. There are many philosophical writings, which are not strictly speaking religious, but which take up the question, and some of them seem to draw on information garnered by contact with people who have passed on. And then there are all the, cultural values, cultural memes, the stories that exist within our cultures about afterlife. The fact that these things are often not in agreement can produce quite a bit of insecurity and fear of dying, besides which some of the teachings, particularly religious teachings about heaven and hell, with the emphasis on the hell and how, if you're a sinner, you're going to go to hell. There's a lot of emphasis on that, can produce quite a fear of dying, because that means you're going to face judgment, and your life will be taken in, how you lived your life will be taken into reckoning, and you will be sent, possibly, maybe you feel likely, if some of the preachers are the way they talk, you've got very little chance, of not going to hell. The belief that one would be reincarnated can be very reassuring, but also very scary, because it makes us consider, like, what in future lifetimes, what karma, both good karma and what we call bad karma, which means challenges and suffering that we may have to endure. What those things are going to look like, how we might examine them, and what measures we might take to ameliorate that. And so what we're doing can be a big concern. A lot of people don't really get serious about what are the consequences of, the life I've lived for an afterlife until very near the end of their life, practically right up to the last day, when they suddenly feel that they have to, pray to God that their life would be judged acceptable. So there's often a lot of fear around dying, around the possibility of dying, around mortality. But there can be fear around immortality too. Of course, immortality can be seen very positively. The immortality that the soul will go on in some form or other, whether it comes back in another lifetime or not. There can be great joy in that. And many people find, quite a bit of comfort. Many people devote themselves very much to living a life that they feel will assure a good afterlife, that they will be granted into the kingdom of heaven, is, or some such thing, however they want to look at it. So confronting immortality is something that also comes up when one is confronting mortality. When we first initially, when we're confronting mortality, we're thinking about, well, what does it mean I'm going to end my life? Pardon me, my life is going to end, in the relatively near future. Not decades from now, but maybe, years from now, or even months from now. And then it's like, and then what? And then what? And have I prepared for the eventualities? And do I have something to look forward to? I can share a story of my own experience. My mother had Parkinson's disease and deteriorated over a 25-year period until there literally was nothing left. And she even got to the point where eating was difficult. But she was completely senile, and serious question about whether she even recognized my sister and I as the principal relatives and caregivers, besides the people in the nursing facility where she was living. And when she was about to pass, my sister and I stayed with her. And early in the morning, I became aware that she was entering that final stage, and I meditated with her and was able to, I felt, make contact with her and communicate with her and reassure her that everything was fine, and that she would soon be free of this body that she no longer had even the slightest control over, or that served her really in any meaningful way other than just keep her breathing. And after she passed, I had this sense that she came out of her body like a butterfly comes out of a cocoon, and broke free, and she came out like she was 20 years old to me. She was very young and vital. But the key thing, she recognized that I was there with her. And the key thing was that she went like, oh, this is really cool. I'm free of my body. Wow, this is great. And wow, I don't know what I have to look forward to, but this is good. This is going to be real super. This is going to be real special. And she actually thanked me for all of the years of meditation that I had put in to make me able to be with her at that level. And she had not been one who was particularly pleased with the fact that I was meditating, and devoted much of my life to meditation. But she liked the outcome. And so we quite reconciled at that point, which was not something I had anticipated, but it was really delightful. And, it showed me that, oh, gee, moving on can be very exciting. And it's a whole new phase of existence. And that's really cool. And we're not bound by this body that is no longer serving us particularly well. So that was a conclusion in my life, that through my experience with my mother, that, just really made me look forward to, like, okay, I'm here now and I'm going to be living for a while, and what I want that to look like. But I know that, when I get to the end of, my time in this body, I've got something to look forward to. And while I don't really know what that's going to look like or how it's going to come out, it's going to be fun. It's going to be really exciting, and it'll be a whole new phase of existence. And I look forward to that very much. So I hope this helps each of you recognize that sooner or later, you got to deal with this, and that you can do that for yourself. You can help your family and your friends deal with your mortality. I've dealt with mortality of other people, not an awful lot, but enough that I feel like I have quite a bit of experience with it. And so, I feel like I come from a place of experience that is, I've had enough experience that It's not that scary anymore. Not ready yet, but I think I will be ready when the time comes. And so we can all get to that place if we put our attention to that. So if anybody has any comments, they can drop them in the chat, which on my computer, the down at the bottom is the menu bar, and there's a little balloon, it's called, it's actually rectangle with the little connection saying speaking from me. So if anybody would like to put anything in the chat, I'll give us just a minute while we're still recording. And while anybody is typing, I will just mention that the next webinar will probably be October 10th, again, the second Tuesday of the month. So we plan to be on time. And I've been looking over, as I said, this topic is kind of the culmination of all that I've been doing over the last years and the many, many webinars that I've done. It's about, I can't remember what the number is, 80 something of these. Done once a month. That's quite a range of time. But I didn't record them all. That is, I didn't do videos like this of them. And so I want to go back and make some videos of some of the original material I covered. And so I think I will start at the very beginning and do a webinar called Wellness Based on Being. Which I explained to some degree on my website. I'm going to elaborate on that quite a bit, and I may talk about some related topics as well. So it may not be entirely new material, but I find that when I do these sort of things, there's always something new that comes out. They always seem fresh to me. So I welcome you all to participate again next month, hopefully October 10th, second Tuesday, October 10th. Anyway, don't see any questions or comments other than people seem to appreciate what I said. So I will end the recording and look forward to seeing everybody next month. We will go on in a few minutes with our group clearing session.